Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, friends. Welcome into the podcast. This is episode 188 with a repeat guest on the show. This is somebody who, I just consider him an absolute wealth of knowledge, a treasure trove of wisdom in the web design world. This is Brad Hussey. Brad's been on the show before. He was on episode 131 where we talked about productizing your web design services. I wanted to bring him back on the podcast specifically to talk about onboarding. So recently we've been talking a lot about getting clients and some vague strategies and some business type things, but I wanted to do an episode specifically to take a deep dive into this phase of web design, which is the onboarding phase. And this is a really, really important phase of the entire web design journey and web design project for your clients. But I also feel like it's one of the most overlooked. For me personally, I didn't really focus on this until later on as a web designer in my career. But once I started really emphasizing the entire process of onboarding, once I really refined that system, it made a night and day difference and impact in my business. And I know it will for you too, because a lot of things happen during the onboarding phase, because there's nothing worse than like getting a client, converting them, and then just having a nightmare of a process when you get your project going. It really sets the stage, this phase of onboarding, for whether a client is going to go well or whether it's going to go not so well. And I want to help you do it well. So we're going to talk about how to automate things, but we're also going to talk about how to be personal and add that personalization touch when needed so that you're not going to, kill yourself on time, but also make it a really welcoming personal touch for your clients, again, to set the stage for the entire web design project. So I can't wait to hear what you think about this one. Definitely let me know when you get through it. And then also I wanted to make sure you knew, we talk about this later on, but Brad has a free resource for you, a free training. You can get that. You can get access to that after this episode. You can go to bradhussey.ca/Josh Hall. So again, that link is bradhussey.ca/Josh Hall. We'll have that linked in the show notes, and you can get a free resource from Brad. He is somebody I definitely wish I would have had in my years when I was early on as a web designer, because he knows what the heck he's doing. And you'll hear how he's learned to refine his processes. And the cool thing is you get to do yours as well for free just by listening to this episode. So can't wait to hear what you think about this one. And by the way, if you want to know my onboarding process in depth, I do have all of my SOPs, my standard operating procedures, and everything that I learned in my journey available for you. It's inside of my business course. And if interested after this episode, you can get access to that course. You can join today by going to joshhall.co/business. I would love to walk you through personally how I onboard my clients and to help you as well. For right now, though, let's hear from Brad to give you some insight on this and give you some inspiration. Here's Brad Hussey, or in the fancy regions of the world, they call him Brad Hussey. And we're going to talk onboarding. Enjoy. Brad, welcome back onto the podcast, man. Thanks for taking some time to chat. And I knew you wouldn't be a one and done guest, man. It's good to have you back on.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to see how long this goes. We've been chatting for like a half an hour before we even started recording, just because
we should have recorded our pre-convo.
It was a good convo, man. It was a really good convo between me trying to encourage you to start a podcast and then talking about our experience with Pat Flynn and SPI and entrepreneurial web design and all kind of stuff. That was a good convo. But I say that to say you are an entrepreneurial web designer. You are the quintessential webpreneur. I think it's definitely an emerging thing going on right now. So like minds, man, I'm really, really excited to chat with you for the next little while here.
Likewise.
And we're going to talk about onboarding. This is something that I've talked a little bit about on the podcast, kind of sporadically, not intentionally. But you have some awesome resources at your website at Brad Hussey. It's CA, right? Yeah, bradhussey.ca. And I'm on your email list. I love your emails. Do you use ConvertKit?
Yep.
So
I can always for a long time.
Okay, I can always tell ConvertKit because the type just looks good. It's very clean. I need to work on my typography formatting and stuff. But anywho, you sent an email about onboarding tips. And I was like, dude, I want to have you back on the show to talk about this. So really, really important area of the web design process. Before we dive into that, man, for folks who didn't hear your first episode, you were back on 131. Do you want to just remind everybody, first off, where you're based out of, and just give us a snapshot of what you're doing right now, man?
Yeah, cool. So I'm in Southern Alberta, Canada. So for anyone who's not from Canada, basically it's like north of the Montana border. So kind of up near the mountains and the prairies and all that sort of country sort of style. So I'm a web designer by trade. I've been doing that for like 10 or 12 years now at this point. So I've seen a lot of progressions in like the web design industry, I guess you could say. I'm also a freelancer and very entrepreneurial kind of minded. So I use the tools and the talents and the skills that I've acquired over time in this field to apply that more entrepreneurially. So creating courses, creating coaching programs, doing consulting, doing more advisory work as well. In addition to just like kind of being in the trenches, so to speak, and actually building websites for people, but in a more productized fashion, which is something that I talk about a lot as well. I'm in Canada. I run my own business from home, and I've been doing it for like 10 plus years now. And it's total blast.
What's the percentage for you, Brad, between doing web design freelance work and coaching and what you're doing with bradhussey.ca?
Yeah. So that's went through a progression where obviously at first it was like 100% service-based work, client work, peppered between agency subcontracting and clients and small businesses, the stuff that probably most of your listeners are aware of and used to. Then that started to kind of get into courses, and I would teach, and I still do teach courses on web design, and I call it the art, business, and craft of web design. Is kind of like the brand of what I do. So there's the business of web design is teaching people how to be a web designer, how to get clients and how to market yourself. The craft is like my tutorials and my courses on getting your hands dirty. The art is like, the beauty and the nuance of web design and how to actually be a good web designer, how to design things. And so as I started getting more into that, my course revenue, because it's ultimately way more scalable than one-to-one service work, it started to grow and then ultimately dwarf in terms of like a ratio from like 100% service work to like 98% course revenue and like 2% service work. Now that I would still, so that 2% service revenue was basically the same as that 100% revenue. Like at one point, gotcha. It was like, so I didn't just like stop cold turkey client work. Like I kept doing it and it would grow. But like the course revenue, just like, ultimately over the course of a few years, like kind of ballooned because it's scalable. And then I eventually had to stop doing client work because I couldn't do both at once. I realized it became very much of a business management issue. Yeah. Where I'm like, I'm doing this.
You're running two businesses. You're running two businesses there, which this is a great lesson. Like if you start a passion project and then suddenly it becomes half of your time, you've got two businesses on your hands.
Exactly. And I didn't know at the time that I could hire somebody to manage it or like more seriously hire somebody to do the fulfillment work. I was still very kind of maybe eager to like please the client and maybe ignorant in the sense that or naive. And then I was like, no, I have to do all the work myself and I have to do everything myself. And I'm the one who's marketing myself. It's my business. I can't let anybody else do this. Otherwise it's fake and I'm totally false. And so I got to the point where I was like, I got to let all of my clients go. And that was also inside of that. It was not just, I'm so busy with coursework, I'm just going to give up on the client work that I enjoy so much. There was a lot of client work that I did not enjoy. So probably a lot of people will resonate with this. Like I would get some big, nice projects, like really good projects, agency subcontracting work, maybe a relationship that I built over time. And it would be like $10,000 plus projects that weren't like a huge amount of effort. And they were really nice. But then all around that, there would be like the little bug requests, the little issues. My site was taken over by a pharmaceutical hack and all these sorts of things. And then I was like always firefighting. at all hours of the day because it'd always be an emergency. And I would always justify that it was fine because my rate, it got to the point where I was able to just like, for a quick fix, I quickly learned that like I could just like fixed rate, value-based rate, hybrid kind of model and just be like, yeah, I mean, it's 11 o'clock at night on a Friday. It'll cost you $300 and, you know, I'll have it taken care of in the next few minutes. And they're like, yeah, totally. So I'm like, man, this is great. Like I'm making good money for literally not a lot of work, not a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I realized like, oh, my whole day was taken over. Like my every day, all day, it was taken over by knowing that there was something coming up. There was an emergency and I felt bad. Like I didn't drop everything that second to help that client's issue because their WordPress site was hacked or any of these sorts of things. And then I always thought, if I don't do that, they're going to go to someone else. And then you feel like, so it was just this really bad situation eventually where I was so stressed, this busy client, busy course-based business, trying to student, support tickets, people asking coding questions, people asking, hey, this isn't working. How do I download this file? And that's growing and growing and growing. And then clients who are paying me money and pretty good money, who I feel beholden to. And then I was just like, something's got to give. And the one that's paying 98% of the revenue is the one that's taking the cake. This has got to go. So I basically fired all of my clients and stopped client work for like 3 years, maybe 2 to 3 years. The odd thing here and there in between that I would do. And then I started to, after a few years of that, and I was just only doing coursework, coaching work, workshop stuff, more like that sort of stuff, really scalable, product-based work. I started to miss like, I really like talking to people and individually helping them and not just like on a, you know, a coaching call. Like I like making things. I realize like I like building stuff and I know it's not scalable. And as an entrepreneur, I should be like really working on the business, not in it. And there's like, but there's a part of me that just wants to like scratch my knuckles up, so to speak, to do something. And so I was like, I think that that's client work, but I'm not doing it the way I did it before.
Gotcha.
You know, and this is where it dovetails into, if people want to go back, if they haven't heard it, listening to our productized conversation, that's where I introduced productizing. I became more aware of productizing and how it can scale. And so then I introduced a productized service and I was very productized in, you know, the work that I want to do. So I only take on like maximum 4 clients a month. Sometimes I get those 4 clients. Sometimes I only get 1 or 2. Sometimes there's months where nothing happens, but that's fine because I don't need it. I enjoy it. It's hard work, but it's lucrative. I enjoy it a lot and it's really, really contained. And there is none of that like firefighting work. And then I can focus on coursework. So now it's probably like an 80-20 split, 80% products, affiliate, ads, courses, miscellaneous stuff, you know, like coaching, workshops, 20% productized services.
80% web entrepreneur, 20% web freelancer.
Exactly. Yep.
That's awesome. I love that you shared that, Brad. We're going to talk about, I know onboarding, I'm sure, is a massive component to what you've done to limit the firefighting aspect of web design, which is really common. And the cool thing about what you shared there is I think we saw all the frustrations that all web designers feel, but I imagine back then, these were all lessons learned that maybe you didn't capitalize on, or maybe didn't, you know, have any knowledge about how to protect yourself from some of those. And you did what all web designers do, which is just to work on Friday nights at 11. But it's interesting to hear that you ended up getting more into the entrepreneurial space, but then went back into web design with this new mindset and with the productized mindset, with all the lessons learned that, you know, they weren't for naught. Like they were a valuable lesson learned type of decade of experience or so for you, it sounds like. So that's cool. I guess exactly. I didn't realize that you had pulled out completely and then, you know, went back in with a different fresh feel. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And it came out of necessity. I just like, I really missed working, like doing service work. I wanted to serve people in like a really non-scalable way. And so I was like, okay, it has to be practical. It's to not take away from a business that's working, but like but I want it to be actually like, I want to get in there and do something. And so I took my own advice that I learned over the years and applied it, and I'm happy to say it works quite well.
It works quite well. And that's what we're going to talk about. I've always felt like that too. I'm like, if I don't miss doing the actual, one-on-one work right now, just with how busy I am with growing my brand. But if I ever do get back into doing that, I'll do the exact same thing. It'll be extremely productized, and I'll basically just follow all my courses and go, have a whole different experience than I did early on. But anyway, so like a big part of this, we'll hone in on onboarding here. Yeah. Cause this is a key part to the web design experience. I think a lot of people are focused on getting clients, getting leads, and just figuring out web design. And then by the time they actually get that lead, it just often kind of falls apart, or it's a bit of a disaster approach where it's scattered. And obviously I have a lot of courses on how to help out with this between my process course and then my business course teaches onboarding. But I wanted to pick your brain about this, and I'm happy to share what I've learned with everyone listening and watching. Let's hone in on onboarding for a few here. What are some of the hangups that you've typically seen with onboarding that you experience and that you've seen a lot of your students experience?
So I think a big hangup that I see, and it's kind of arisen out of a pattern of my students who I tell them, like, you should be onboarding. Here's the flow of kind of like your sales process to onboarding or the whole process of the client life cycle. It's like finding the client, getting the client, doing the work for the client, and then maintaining a relationship with the client. And that's a cycle. A lot of hangups are, I think there's two parts to this. Is a lot of freelance like web designers and entrepreneurial web designers, or, people who want to be more entrepreneurial as a web designer, they're so focused and isolated mentally into the fulfillment work. They're like, if I could just have the client do the work, then that would be great. But finding the client, getting the client, making sure the whole onboarding and everything is taken care of, that's like, I don't understand that. Mm-hmm. But so if someone feels like that and they don't want to run a business, then go get a good job. There's lots of work in startups, new companies, bigger agencies. There's lots of work there. Do that. There's nothing wrong with that, no matter what people say. But if you're like, but I want to run my own shop. I want to run my own show. I want to be more entrepreneurial. Like, that's exciting to me. And that's a journey I want to venture down. Okay. So with that said, you need to step back and realize that fulfillment work is only one part of it. And you need to stop thinking in only fulfillment work. In fact, you need to think about how you could be the one not doing the fulfillment work, even if you want to. Like, I like doing some fulfillment work, but if it gets busy enough, I will have someone else do the fulfillment work because it's all a process and a system that doesn't require me individually. So that's one hangup. Another hangup with specifically onboarding is that a lot of entrepreneurial web designers, they don't actually step back to look at patterns and systems in their onboarding. They think it's always custom. They're always treating it as every individual lead and client that comes through, I have to manually do that process and individually do that process. Yeah. And they never take a step back to realize that it's all repetitive. And with repetition, you can actually compound the value of that process. So a lot of people think, it's, I want to be hands-on and be one-on-one and really guide them through this process and really just kind of treat it as this custom bespoke process. And whether they say it that way or not, like, that's the way that they treat it, but they use it as a smokescreen because they're afraid to actually kind of like automate this process.
Yeah. Or systematize, because no creatives want to hear the word system. I didn't. No. I was like, if I'm not wearing a suit and going into a high rise, I don't want to hear about systems. But the reality is systems are awesome when you're a business owner.
And systems are awesome for creatives because systems are boundaries and frameworks. And when you're just having this fully open blank canvas, that's actually not very helpful to the creative process. But if you were to tell someone really creative, let's say like an artist who's painting, and you just gave them like a white canvas and you said, paint me something amazing. Maybe some people might be able to do something with that, but they still resort to some sort of framework or system. They think of an idea, they think of a constraint. So constraints are actually really, really valuable to the creative process.
Yeah.
Like fundamentally valuable. So think of it more as like, when you have constraints, then you can think of something. So if I hand you a canvas and I say, paint me let's say paint something for me only using this color. That's it. Or if you said another constraint on top of that, paint me like a landscape using only circles. Then the creative mind is like, that's exciting. These are really rigid constraints that seem counterintuitive to the creative process, but actually makes it like flourish, because then you're like, how can I express this using only those constraints? That's super exciting. And so the same thing goes for your onboarding. If you say, here's your client, bring them on board. You're like, okay, I guess I'll call. And then I guess I probably should write up a custom proposal and then maybe give them some options. And then, okay, I'm going to write up that document again. And then you're just like, you're kind of just floundering. But if you say,
floundering is a good word for it.
Exactly. And that's all you're doing. It's not creative. It's not professional. And the client hates it. The client doesn't like it, whether they realize it like purposefully or subconsciously, consciously or subconsciously, they hate it because it's so unprofessional. But when it's like smooth and they feel like they've stepped into a system, they feel like you know what you're doing. You are competent. Yes, I'm paying you for your expertise and your creativity, but I don't want to feel like I'm walking into just some like mess.
Yes, this is really important. This is a huge point for the client side of things, because I felt the same way, Brad, early on. I was like, I basically unintentionally said, I'm going to let the client guide me through the project. That's the complete opposite of what you want to do. You want to be the one to guide the client through, especially when you're getting a project started, which is what we're honing in on. Onboarding is code for getting started. Like how do you get the project started? How do you empower the client? How do you let them know what the next steps are? What are the next steps? Communication is a part of this. I'm sure we'll talk about some content collection, although that bleeds into project management. All of these things, your client should not dictate the control of you. And I understand when you're starting, if you haven't gone through my course or any other courses on this, it's going to be a floundering process. But as soon as you start to find your way, make it a system. And for anyone who doesn't speak Canadian, process for Brad. But
that's right.
I want to make sure we clarify that, since we're a global podcast. But
totally,
it's true, man. Like, and I know it seems like you're disrespecting your clients if you are the one in control, but you should be the one in control. And here's something to remember. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Clients are already overwhelmed when they're investing in a website and they're thinking about content and mission and copy and all these other things. They should not have to concern themselves with deadlines of getting started and tools and all that stuff like that. If you can make the most seamless onboarding process to put your clients at ease, that kicks off the tone for the whole project, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it does. It's like, when I took my own advice and created a really rigid, systemized onboarding process for my productized service. So I'm talking like in this productized service, there's nothing but rigid frameworks. Even the service itself is very like, I could follow an instruction. And in fact, I do. When I went totally loosey-goosey on it, and I did some client work in this productized service, where I was just like, no, I know the process. Like, I got this. Like, I'm good at this. I got this. I realized like half the day was gone and I was still getting set up. And I was like, I only got 3 or 4 hours left of this. Like, this is a done in 1 day service. And I have 3 hours left to do the whole day's work, because I was floundering about thinking that I knew how to do this.
Instead of actually following your systems.
Yeah. I created a Trello board with like, Brad, here's the steps. Follow them in this order. Don't be an idiot and do it this way. You've done this so many times before. Do it this way. And then once you do it, you'll realize that was inefficient. I could do this better. Make a note. The next time I do that, take that out, do it this way, put this one first. And then I'm following instructions that I created to make sure that what I'm doing, those constraints allow me to do the best possible work. Also, and I know we're talking about fulfillment here, but if we can tie it back into onboarding. If I wanted somebody else to do that fulfillment work for me, here's the instructions. I'll train you on my process. Here are the assets that I use to make sure it looks like it's my brand and my work, my hand. You do it. Here's how it works. Follow these instructions. Don't veer from it. If you have a way of improving it, tell me and we'll improve it. Now, when it comes to onboarding, it's the same thing. When I got a client, my onboarding process for this specific service, and I think everybody's onboarding can be different. It doesn't have to be rigid in that it's all the same.
Sure.
Your onboarding should be systemized to the way that your process works. And so for me, I will do, let's say, a call like this, or I'm on another podcast and we're talking about, email marketing, or we're talking about ConvertKit, or we're talking about some other thing that ties into the service that I provide. Let's say web design. Somebody listens to it and goes, that guy sounds decent. I'm going to go to that link that he mentioned. And I go to the link. So they're on my sales page. They watch the video, me explaining it. A little bit of personality there. I explain the service, explain the offer and the value. And then the call to action is put your email in the box below. And then I'll send you a whole bunch of emails each day that are really cheeky, getting you, convincing you to buy the thing. And it's honest, it's upfront, it's my brand, it's my personality. They read the sales page. If it's for them, they immediately know and they love it. They book a call. They get on a call. Before the call, there's a bunch of questions, laying out expectations, talk for about 5 to 10 minutes because they already are primed and they already know what I'm offering. I don't have to come around the back and say, oh, by the way, here's my sales offer. Are you going to do it? They already know. And then the payment is accepted automatically. They book the day, they pay it, they sign the contract all automatically. They get an onboarding email. They get a Trello board that's templatized. I change a few things for them specifically.
Sure.
And they start the work. And then the day comes and I do the work that I just mentioned is me following my own orders to this person's brand, this person's business, this person's wording. I follow, there's creative process in there, but all of that requires zero, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of a call and 5 to 10 minutes of making sure the Trello board is set up properly. So about, let's say 30 minutes of work for somebody to go from, that sounds good, to this is what I want, book a call. Yes, that's good. Pay, contract, book the day, do the homework, do the onboarding process, provide me all the assets that I need without me talking to them about it. I show up for the day. I do the work.
So I would love to hear a little bit more about specifically that phase between they just paid. Because these are, in my mind, these are kind of like 3 areas you've kind of encompassed here, Brad, which is like the funneling and the conversion, and then the onboarding, and then fulfillment, which So let's
do another episode on that.
Yes, that's going to like advanced content collection and fulfillment, revisions, project management. That's definitely its own topic. So on onboarding itself, this is really interesting because I found too, when I systematize that. And when I made my own process on that alleviated so many headaches for me. It also set the tone for the entire project to go really well. Like because previous to that, I remember same thing, just loosey-goosey, just floundering around. I was all excited. I just got paid. But then I was like, oh shoot, now I actually need to figure out how to get content, need to have a call with them to figure out what they want. I often didn't do a good job of figuring out the scope of the project and the billing and proposal process, which is also a separate phase of this. And I should say too, I am going to plug my course on this because if it's starting to sound overwhelming, this is why I built my business course, which everyone can check out. It literally shares my whole process. But in this idea of onboarding, this is the thing that sets the tone. This is also the thing that gets the client started in the right mindset, because if you start your projects out and it starts chaotically, guess what's going to happen? It's going to continue on and end in chaos. Would you back me up in saying that, Brad? Like the better the onboarding process, the better the entire experience goes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a phrase that I like to use. that I've heard from somewhere. I don't know where it came from, but it's basically crap in, crap out. And actually I know where it came from. It was a sound engineering for dummies book way back like 15 years ago when I thought I wanted to get into audio engineering for musicians.
I thought I was going to be from the food industry. Okay. So what
you know what? I think it applies as the same thing. So basically the concept is if you have your microphone and you can have a nice microphone. I got a nice microphone. I got a nice cable. I've got all the nice equipment. But if the signal going in is bad, so I'm far away from the microphone, or there's white noise, or there's noise happening, or I haven't sound dampened the room, or any of that, I put the volume too low by accident.
Yeah.
If the signal going in or the input is bad, no matter how much I edit in post, compress, equalize, any of it, it's going to be garbage coming out. Same thing goes for, so it's the same thing. Crap in, crap out. So if your onboarding process is just bad or it's non-existent doesn't exempt you from doing it poorly. It just automatically means it's done poorly. And so that's a garbage signal going or input going in, which means the signal coming out is going to be garbage. And the whole process is going to be framed by it.
That's beautiful. Well said. I'm going to have to steal that. I'm going to make that a little quote snippet for you for this episode. Crap in, crap out. Brad Hussey.
We'll tweet it.
Yeah, there we go. So let me just share the few things that I put in my onboarding process. And then I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you can expand the Trello board and the call and stuff. So for me, before we even get to content collection, it was, I would say 3 things. Once somebody signed up, I would send them it was an automated email after they paid to what I called my getting started page. This was just an explainer page that just guided all the clients through what to expect before we get started. The reason I did this is because I found myself repeating this every project. I would say, here are the tools I use. Here's the process moving forward. We're going to hone in on this process. Here's a couple other things you need to know. Here's the communication boundaries, and here's what to expect as we get moving forward. That was what I repeated every project. And I was like, one day I was like, oh my gosh, I could make a getting started page with a little video of myself explaining all this, and it would save me an hour and a half every project. So I did that. That was huge. The next piece to that was the project management side. Like, actually, there was a piece before that, which was the strategy call. So I always tell my students, you don't want to talk about fonts and colors and design styles and all that stuff before you get paid. So don't mix the proposal process with the creative process. You need to find out the scope of work, but you don't need to talk about what colors they like yet. So that second piece to that is I had a strategy questionnaire, which was basically all that stuff. And it's very robust. That's when the client can sit down for 10, 15, 20 minutes and go through that. Then it was the start of the project management. And then once I got that, then we moved into Basecamp, where I would have the first steps that they needed to do to get us going. I kept it really simple. And I did not say, well, eventually in the beginning, I said, send me your content. And guess what happened? As I'm sure you've experienced, Brad, emails, text, 100 emails at once with a picture in each email. I realized, okay, I need to create some sort of system that just says, if we're going to send images, I'll set up a Dropbox for you, blah, 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 blah. And that's how I got the project started. So those were the 3 phases in my process that really just changed the game for me. What did yours look like? Just, from they paid to before collecting content?
Yeah. So pretty similar in nature. And when I did more customized web design work, so building WordPress websites, doing that sort of work was web design and web development. When I would do that, it was very similar in nature. And now that what I offer is quite productized in that the actual fulfillment is pretty systemized as well. It's not open for discussion what the outcome is. It's like you buy the outcome and that's what we're signing up to. So that aside, the onboarding process more practically for me is after the call and all that sort of stuff. So after the sales process is done and they say, okay, they pay and book the day because it's a day-based work. So it's like they pick a day that they want the outcome to happen. It's on my calendar, on the availability that I do the work only on Wednesdays. So that's when I open my calendar for that. They book the day that works for them and me. They pay for it on the spot in full. There's no like 50-50. And they agree to the contract on the spot. It all happens in one fell swoop.
Gotcha.
And so I'm not chasing down. I'm not trying to get signatures. I'm not trying to like hound them for final payment. It's just done. That triggers an automation that says, so-and-so has just paid, and then set up a Trello board template. So I also used Basecamp for my more comprehensive web-based work, and I did use it for this one-day service as well. But I switched to Trello for a couple of reasons. One is that the free version of Trello does everything that I need, and the client was less confused for this specific service. It was just like, here's a card, do it, done. So that worked for me.
There is a difference between task management and like full communication project management too, which is, that's the difference to me with Basecamp and Trello. Like if you have a templatized process, that's like step 1, step 2, step 3, then Trello is great for that.
Yeah, exactly. For the work that wasn't one day, Basecamp really quickly becomes a superior tool in my experience, because you have more ongoing communication and schedules. And so this was like, you show up, like I do the work on the day, here's some pre-homework. Trello works swimmingly for it. So
gotcha.
Creates an automation trigger, set up Trello board based on a template. I will make some changes in there because certain things don't apply to their project, but it's pretty much all the same. So in that Trello board template, I have one list that says in capital letters on the top, and it's like color coordinated and everything. This is like to do for client, start at the top of this list. And then the first card says, read me first. And in that, there's like a video. So they get it when they sign up, they get a video from me. It says like, hey, welcome. Here's the ground rules. Here's how this works. Here's the schedule. Here's how this works. Like I lay everything out, all of those repetitive things that I said over and over again. I put it in one video that I scripted out, that I edited. I made sure everything I needed to say was said perfectly with clarity, and I didn't miss a beat. And it's there. They get to watch it. They're introduced to me a little bit more, and they see, here's what's next. Here's what to expect. Here's how this works. Here's the ground rules. Here's the framework. Here's what you need to do next. And so that saves me a 15-minute Zoom call or longer, back and forth and all this sort of stuff.
Sure.
They get to watch it. Maybe they watch it 3 times to clarify a couple of things. They don't have to ask me questions. Trello board, start here first. Welcome. Here's how this works. Step 1, start with this. And so it's in chronological order, or in sequential order rather, what I need from them. So I have a questionnaire. It's a type form. Any sophisticated, form tool would work.
Yeah. I use Gravity for actually on the strategy questionnaire. I actually had it hooked in with 17 hats, which is what I use for all the workflow, project management, and proposal, invoice, and all that stuff. But either one. Yeah, exactly. Totally. And so in that type form, that's where I collect all of that information that I need. So it's a pretty lengthy form. Probably takes a client 30 to 40 minutes to complete. And that's, they could do it quicker, but they usually want to get it right. And so I tell them like, and are they adding any content in there? Like, I imagine what you'll get in there is likely what you could use for the homepage or stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's like, it's basically all the assets that I need, logins. I provide a place where they can give me access. Like with ConvertKit, you don't have to give me your password. You can just add me as like a member, like to your thing. So I give them instructions. Here's how to add me to your ConvertKit. Here's how to add me to your Teachable. Here's how to give me access to this. Here's how to give me temporary access to this. All instructions. Do this. Now let's talk about the broader picture here. What makes this a huge home run for you, this project? So now I have a framework to know like, that is their trigger for knowing that we've won. We did this. So because it's a very similar process for everyone, people interpret it differently. Like this, I've done this when I don't have to log back into my ConvertKit account. It just runs automatically. Or I've done this when I've got my first student sign up and I paid for this service in full. Like whatever it is, I go, okay, that's their winning metric. Let's frame it around that, and let's converse about it around that, and make sure that that's what happens. So I have that. I want to know about your competition. I want to know what you love about them, but I want you to also tell me where they're dropping the ball and you're going to swoop in and eat their lunch. And I want to know about your brand. I want access to your logos in high res. I want your headshots. I want this, all the assets that I do not want to send one single email or message to you saying, hey, can you send me like your high res headshot? Not that like nice 200 pixel JPEG off of Facebook. Like, like I get all of this. It's all automatic in Typeform. And so I get all these sorts of things. And then I get everything like, what are your prices for your products? What are your offerings? What's your primary offering? Gotcha. What is all these things? Like, I want to know everything. And then what that lets me do is it lets me analyze it and go, okay, here's their winning metric. Here's how we know that we've succeeded. Here's the primary offer. Here's their secondary offer. Here's the pricing. Here's what they'd like. Here's this. Here's the frequency that they want to send emails. Here's their brand voice, competition. So I get all of that. I don't have to do anything because I've done all the work. I put hours into this Typeform and I constantly improve it. I was
just going to ask, is this in one of your courses or is this available anywhere? Like the fields you have in that Typeform? Is.
Yeah, definitely. So this exact Typeform, I don't have in I don't open it up to show. I mean, unless someone bought the service and they went through it, they can see. But I do teach this very specifically in my course that shows like your onboarding could be crazy automated and so robust and technical and even customized, where if they answer this question, this is the next question. And if
what's that course? We can plug that here.
Sure. Yeah. That's the launch course. And we'll put that as a resource on the link that we share here, bradhussey.ca/Josh Hall. Put a resource on there for people. But yeah, it's just the launch course on my Freelancing Freedom website.
Awesome. So that questionnaire is much more than just a few details. That's like everything you need. It's a little bit of content collection in there too. Actually, it sounds like a lot of content, but a templatized, systematized content collection strategy.
Yeah. I get it all. And then depending on, so one of the productized services, one is very heavily content based. So one of them is like building out your entire email marketing system in ConvertKit. So because it's emails, that's all content. Like emails aren't emails without words. Right. And so I need a lot of those things. I need variations on their pitches. I need different offers. So if they have 3 products, I want 3 micro pitches, I call them, that I put in a PS that I cycle through dynamically. I want 3 pitches for each product, so I can create some sort of functionality there. But I don't just say like write 3 pitches. I went ahead and wrote variations that they can just fill in the blanks.
Oh, okay.
To the way I think it should be. And if they're a writer or if they know their thing better than I do, I say, you don't have to use this, but if you're just like looking at a blank page and stressing out, just copy and paste this and fill in your product and your outcome and price here.
And you had mentioned you do make the client do a little bit of homework before they get to this Typeform, right? So that way they're not thinking they're going to send in a few details for 30 seconds. And then they're like, oh, this is like a half an hour. This is like a half an hour deal here.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like, I do I lay out all the expectations. And so they know what's next. And I tell them on the calls, like, because this is done in one day, don't think that you don't have anything to do about it.
Gotcha.
It's like, you got like the next 10 to 14 days. Because I don't let them book any sooner than that. Like if someone's like, I'm ready to start, can we start tomorrow? I go, well, you can book the next available day, which is in 14 days from now. You can't book tomorrow because you got a lot of work to do. And then on the day, I'm just gonna be chasing you down for filling out the forms and stuff. So
gotcha.
They got all this work and they can do it in pieces. So I tell them like, this is a big one. Give yourself time to do this. And when it comes to specifically content collection, so I give them like, okay, here are your welcome emails. Here are your pitch emails. Here are your evergreen emails. Here are your micro pitches. Here's this. Here's this. I need all of these pieces, these modular segments. Write me these emails. In fact, here is a database of, swipe templates that you can use to create that 5-day email sequence for your brand. Copy and paste them, change it up, use your own words. Or if you already have one, forget what I shared and just give me what you have. In your words. And so I get all of it. And then they have to physically drag that card from write your 5-day email sequence from to do to done. And so if I see that, and I give them due dates, I say like, this is due and assigned to you to be done. It's probably around 3 days before the actual day.
Yeah. That's another biggie for the onboarding process. Some sort of deadline or due dates on each phase, no matter whether it's a 1-day deal or whether it's a 30-day website project, whatever. Yeah. Those deadlines are huge.
Exactly. And so it really works. And I tell them like, here's the thing, like if you don't do your homework, I'll still show up for the day and do my part, but you won't have anything in there. You'll just have shells. So if I'm doing, say, this email marketing intensive and I'm building out your whole system, I'd like to, at the end of the day, hit the green button that says go. And then all your subscribers go through this system and it's beautiful and you start making sales, getting leads. I'd like that for you. But if you don't get this done, you're going to have a shell that you need to, on your own time, put it all in, and you have no deadline, you have nobody holding you accountable, and you have no pressure. Guess when that gets done? Never. And you just spent $2,500 or whatever the price is for that specific offer to basically do nothing and have just a shell that's just collecting dust. Do the damn work. And they go, yep, okay.
Yeah. Well, and if you, like I said, we've talked about constraints. Giving clients constraints is big too. Like if you tell them, for example, send me content for the homepage, like I used to do, that could be 3 sentences or that could be 3 books. And then you have to decide, oh, what am I going to put in here? So if you give them like literally, however many words for this section, however much for this, however, type of sections we're going to have in this design, and then a deadline, there you go. That's 101 for better content collection, which could be better. It's interesting because you've merged, and I think this goes back to the difference between my style of web design, which was generally a 30 to 45 day type project. Yeah. Although I definitely probably could have done them in less than a week, or even some cases at one of the day rates, whereas yours was a templatized day rate model. Yeah. Are you a fan of Sarah Massey with day rates? Yeah. She's been on the show before. Yeah, it sounded like a very similar approach where you basically gear it up for that 8-hour block or whatever it is. And it's, you make sure you have everything that way. It's go time as far as the implementation. But yeah, that makes sense. So I am curious about, as far as in that onboarding process, what about communication? Now, this may be a little different with a day rate. You're probably not as worried about clients randomly dinging you for the next few weeks at night. But when do you mention that? Is that in the questionnaire or is that beforehand?
Yeah. So I want to make, what I found, because I also collect feedback and it's all automatic and it's all systemized, the whole thing, and automated. But I want feedback because it's a repetitive process. And so say the onboarding, like I actually collect feedback on how do you feel the onboarding process was, and the communication, and how would you rate this? And would you give me any feedback? Like, feel free to hurt my feelings. Like you're not going to hurt my feelings. Feel free to say whatever. Cause I actually take every piece of feedback, make a swipe file and go through the list and go, okay, client thought this was weird or didn't like that. I switched from Basecamp to Trello because I tested it. And a client said, Basecamp was this massive confusing thing for me and I don't get it. Trello for another client was like so easy. It was stupid easy. I use it all the time. So it's like, Trello it is.
Gotcha.
So I take this feedback. And so one of them was about communication. And so when I started to notice, people were like, I felt like stuff happened around me without me. And I kind of would have liked some check-in points. So some personal human, and I was like, so I've automated this a little too much where I don't actually need to talk to them and they don't feel comfortable in that. Even though I still do the work and it's still done well, they feel like it kind of got out of their hands. So I went, okay. So then some human touch points that are more personalized, those actually matter. And
even during the day, like,
even during the day. Yeah. So I had a client say, I felt like I was just kind of waiting and looking at my phone, waiting for some sort of update from you to say like, are things going well? Like, even if you just said like this is going to be amazing. Can't wait to share this with you. Like, that would have been nice. And so I went, got it, noted. So now what I do is I tell the client, you do not need to be available on the day. That's my day. I want you to have a coffee, do your work, whatever your thing is, or sleep. If you're in the UK, and it's bedtime, don't worry about your phone. Yeah. But I will check in with you to let you know how things are going, or just to give you an update, just to know, like, I'm here, I'm doing it. So at 9, when I start, or a little bit before, I say, like, it's go time. Like, here we go, ready to rock. I'm excited for this. I'll send them a little message at noon. And this is if there's no issue. Sometimes I need to get a login that they forgot to send, or they changed their password. There's things like that. But if without that, I'll check in and say, like, hey, taking a quick lunch break here. Things are looking amazing. Or sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm getting more of this done quicker than possible. I actually will be able to do that extra thing that you asked about. Mind sending me that, that information on that? Here's a quick form to just submit that info really quick. Or sometimes I've been able to, like, really get a groove and go, like, hey, like, throw me a couple extra things and I'll toss it in there for if you want. And so then they feel like, hey, you're actually working on it. Things are good. I feel at ease. And it was easy. It takes me a couple seconds to send a message to say, like, it's going great. This is awesome. Like, can't wait to share it. And that made them feel good. The more specific communication, though, I tell them as a part of the process, we get on a call before and we get on a call afterwards.
Okay. So, that's what I was wondering, because I didn't know if, they're calling like, hey, Brad, how's it going? Just checking in, or text, ding, ding. What's going on with it?
Exactly.
Just sitting here wondering. Yeah.
Yeah. So I say, like, we do a call before the day. I give them automatically when they book the thing. So this is part of the onboarding automation. They book the day and immediately are on another page that says, now book your pre-call, like your pre-intensive meeting and your post-intensive meeting. So I want the call before and a call after. So the kickoff call, the wrap-up call, want to call it that. And so they book those on the spot. It's also part of their list. If they don't book those, they see, like, book your kickoff call, book your wrap-up call. And on those calls, I go, this is where we can answer any questions that you're unclear about, or give you any reassurance. Or if I realize that you haven't done your homework, I can see it. And I feel like I need those things done. Here's the thing. Gotcha. I've just notified you in the board, get that done, get working on that. And then they go, okay, cool. Here's my question about that. And then they feel like, man, I'm so excited. A lot of the time it's just like, I can't believe how smooth this is. Or, like, this is so awesome. Like, I feel like you just, like, got this down, or it just seems so professional. I haven't experienced something like this before. That's usually what the call ends up before and afterwards.
And you're like, it's just pure genius. It's not years and years of hard lessons learned.
Exactly. I know. Hey, it's like, no, I just pulled this out of the top of my hat and I just had an intuition. I was like, no, there's a lot of, like, trial by fire here. And so the communication's there. It's all, I create these constraints, these really rigid, systemized constraints. And that allows me to do the best version of all of those things. So the onboarding, it gets better each time with each repetition because I implement feedback. The communication gets better because I already can anticipate the questions they have, can put that in, like, a little welcome sheet, or say, do you have any questions about your availability on the day, or this or this? And then they go, yes, that was my next question, actually.
Gotcha.
And then just like, you're like a ninja or something, like, you know everything about this. And I go,
you read my mind. You knew I was going to ask this.
Exactly. And so that repetition and those constraints allows me to get better and better at it, and be even, like, it improves my creativity. It improves the value of the service, because I've identified repetitions, I've systemized them, and I've created, like, this orderly process from beginning to end that the client walks in and is like, whoa, I just feel like you took care of everything for me. This is amazing. And I've had clients on the spot right after the day go, I've already booked another one of these because that was amazing. And it really speaks to the value of that system.
Yeah. And again, the starting point of that onboarding process. So wow.
Laying the expectations.
Mic drop on that one, Brad. I mean, you really laid out exactly everything you did there. And again, I mean, I want to preface, there's a difference between a VIP day, a day rate kind of project that's templatized and systematized versus more of a custom style project. However, you can still have the systematized areas in a custom project, particularly like, I don't know what size type of projects those are, but if I'm building an e-commerce site that has 100 products, that's that's going to be more than an 8-hour day type of situation. So, but the point is you can still make, particularly in the onboarding side, these like little tweaks to automate things, systematize it, templatize it.
Yep.
And it really just sets the tone. And I guess I was trying to think of some of the words that I could kind of sum up everything you just mentioned. Some that come to mind are empowerment, like empowering the client with what they need to do to feel good about everything they need to get you. I think care was in there for sure. Like truthfully, your project, you're going to be able to care for it better if you have everything you need and have the constraints in there. Constraints was another one. That's a big time word in onboarding. We talked a little bit about either deadlines or due dates, another biggie, communication, all those words kind of wrapped up in this onboarding umbrella. That definitely worked for me, and it's awesome to hear it worked for you, man. So that's great. That was really cool.
Totally. And that you're right, that those like constraints actually breed more creativity, and it allows you to get to the part that you actually enjoy most. You know, like if you love the fulfillment work or you love another part of the process, like all the more reason for you to have a really smooth, professional, constrained onboarding process. And it still works for those big projects. Like all it means is you need to sit down a little bit longer to say, where are the patterns in this? Because it's all patterns. And you say like, here's this, maybe it's week based, maybe it's like 3-month project. You go, okay, well, how did those 3 months break down to get the outcome that you're promising? And how do you create a system out of that? Now it's going to require more work from you, but you're probably getting, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 job. You can afford to sit down for a day and create a really good system for that timeline, and then apply that system to the next project. So you spent a day creating it. The next time it takes you an hour to make sure it's just so. So it's like, put in the work now and it will pay off in dividends as you keep doing it.
That's a great point. I did have one question before we get ready to conclude this one here, Brad.
Yeah.
If somebody does not follow through on all those pieces in the onboarding process, you mentioned that you're going to have this blank day where you're going to do your work. Do they book another day with you that you may be scheduled out for a month, or what? I'm just curious in your end of things, like if they don't get everything that you need, or they've got like half the content that you need, what do you do from that point?
Yeah. So I do encourage them to like get it all done. And most of the time they do. That said, I've created the way that I do the work. Like it's kind of like a fail safe. I will expect that they don't provide me everything I need. I will, how's the word? Like where you hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Kind of anticipate not everything, like what, like a 90-95% completion kind of deal. Yeah.
So it's like, I want to create it so that by the end of the day, everyone's still happy and satisfied. I don't want to create it where if they don't provide something, then it breaks the whole thing. So I need to create like foolproof systems as well. So if they don't provide everything, I do encourage them and push them to do it. But I also tell them like, hey, I also recognize maybe you can't for some various reason, personal, professional, something just doesn't work out. So that's okay, because I want to reassure them, here's what happens. And at the end of it, I have a video that walks through the whole process, and I do a call with them, and I give them like about a month where I could say, just like reach out anytime if you have any questions, or if I'm like, you filled out all the info. So I just had a client who didn't get everything done, but I reassured them that like, hey, it's fine. We're going to do a wrap-up call. You have a training video with instructions on the whole thing, on how to take care of it from here. And anytime something comes up in the next month or so, I'm pretty flexible. I'll help you figure that out, or I'll give you an answer to it. And so they on a month later, maybe 29 days later, they were like, I'm about to turn on the whole system. I added all the content, but I'm really confused about this thing. And then I shot a quick screen recording video, answered the question, shot it off to them. They're very happy. And now everything's running smooth. So I reassure them, and I make sure they know that I don't ghost on them. I'm actually here to help them succeed. And I'd actually be happy for a longer term relationship if they want to get into more of a coaching engagement or more advisory role on like the whole overseeing the system.
Gotcha.
knowing that I built the system properly. And if you need some more guidance moving forward, like I can help them with that. So, I make sure that it's when I'm done in the day, I'm not just gone. Like I'm actually here to make sure that it works.
Yeah.
And they're happy. So I do provide extra communication afterwards, which is easy for me. It doesn't take much time.
I like that idea of like planning for the best, but preparing for the worst. So you're not caught off guard if they didn't get everything to you, like, okay, this is bound to happen. Here's the next step. I think that's a really good way to go about it. One of my colleagues, Emma Kate from Down Under, she said when it came to particularly client boundaries and communications, if they cross those boundaries, she has templates that she sends to them. Like she puts the right name in and everything, but there's no ambiguity about, well, what should I say? It's like, she's got it. It's there. She's got it all written out. So anytime, again, going back to the beauty of templatizing and systematizing, which sound like terrible manufacturing corporate terms, but for creatives, it's key. So I love that, Brad.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, I got one final question for you. First off, thank you so much for sharing your process. This is really enlightening. This is really cool. I mean, I just kind of scratched the surface of what I have done that has helped, but to hear how you've done yours, particularly towards the day rate type of model, the VIP days, obviously, if that's going to work, you have to have a very systematized approach. So that's really cool to hear how that works. Where would you like everyone go after this, man? I know you've got a special link set up. Let's talk about that. I got one final question for you.
For sure. Yeah. Go to bradhussey.ca/Josh Hall. And I'm sure you'll link that up so that, there's no typos and things like that for people. On that page, it's going to be very smooth and seamless. I talk about systemizing and everything. So you can expect the same on that page. Resources from this conversation and the last, to help you kind of get in there, to know how to get started, to help you systemize or even productize. There's a lot that you can go from there. So I'll make sure when you go to that page, you're kind of taken care of and you know where to go from next with me.
Awesome. So last quick question for you here.
Yeah.
What if someone is fairly new and they're really excited about this, but they might be feeling a little overwhelmed to put all this in place? What would be like the one thing that you would recommend they start with? What's maybe one of the most important aspects of this just to get started with?
Take out a notebook and a pen and write down when you do anything. So you got a client. Okay. Just do your thing, but add in one extra layer of complexity, just one. You got your journal or your pen and paper, and write down all of the steps that you are taking. So you wrote them an email welcoming them. And you just, instead of being unconscious about it, which you have been up to this point, go, okay, send welcome email. Then, you wrote proposal, or you sent them your Basecamp link and you set up a Basecamp project. You go, okay, I created a Basecamp project from scratch, but so here's this. And you write down every single step. And you probably will fill up 2 or 3 pages. If you're really detailed, don't be afraid to write down literally got water, went to the washroom because I needed a break. Write it all down. And then once you've done the whole thing for your onboarding process, keep it contained. You don't have to do it for everything. And you go through the whole process, you journal and audit every single step that you took in that day or that hour or that week, whatever your process was. And then carve some time out in your workday or your day and look at it and find patterns and see where there are repetitions. Is this something that you do every single time, that you would do every single time? Is this just something that you did on the spot that isn't repetition? And then you can create from that some sort of order. Even if you're not creating all these automated type forms and gravity forms and all this stuff, you can get there. You can hire people to do that. In fact, you can even have a piece of paper that just says, step 1, send welcome email, copy and paste this text. Okay. Step 2, here's the proposal. In fact, here's the template. Send that. Step 3, create a Basecamp template because it's always the same. Modify a couple things. Send that. And then that alone will have saved you. You put in a lot of work auditing, but that alone will save you hours and hours and hours moving forward.
Great. Well, and what I was thinking, so for scaling, I call that the task inventory, where you literally just write down what the heck you're doing. The cool thing about that, though, I agree, that is the best place to start because now there's your roadmap. Now you just need to categorize things, automate things where you can, but you could just go one step at a time. So that's a great point, Brad. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Instead of
you should be able to sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
I was just going to say, instead of making, a form that has 100 fields right away, just first off, write down what the heck you're doing, and then one step at a time. Exactly.
And then you should be able to, here's just a kind of a thought here. If you have that like task inventory, you should be able to say, like, if we ever offered this, jump on a call with you or me and show me that thing. And I can then go, okay, here's this process, automate that. This is definitely repetitive. You shouldn't do this and do this. Here's the structure for your onboarding process now. I should be able to look at it and go, oh yeah, I see how this works. Here's how you should go about doing that. It should be as straightforward as that. Like if you produce a task inventory for someone like you or me to look at it and go, oh yeah, here are the patterns. Here's how you move forward now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brad, gold, man. Thank you so much for sharing your process, particularly for onboarding. I love having you on, man. I can tell you're just super passionate about what you do. And I love your heart for being transparent about giving back to help others, my audience, and everyone else out there, particularly web designers, web creatives, web entrepreneurs. So, man, really, really appreciate that. We'll have all this linked in the show notes. And like I said, definitely not going to be the last time. So, man, maybe we could talk fulfillment or all kinds of stuff on the next one. So
I'd love to be on again. We can dig into this, of course.
Awesome, man. And hopefully when you get your podcast going, I'll be happy to come on as well.
I'll have you on. Totally.
We'll start sharing it, man. There's plenty of space in the web design world for some podcasts.
I love it.
Awesome. Keep that stash going, by the way, man. It's looking great.
I think it will.
Keep it going, man. Thanks, Brad.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.